It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. Making waves in the Channel, Starmer and Macron agree a one-in, one-out deal to stop the smuggling gangs. It'll begin within weeks.
We're determined, together, to end this vile trade. There is no silver bullet here, but with a united effort, new tactics, and a new level of intent, we can finally turn the tables.
As the politicians thrash out a plan, we see firsthand some of the tactics used by smugglers in the Channel. Also tonight, despite the hopes and aspirations, Benjamin Netanyahu prepares to leave the US without a ceasefire deal. While in Gaza, the Israeli attacks continue. At least 16 people, most of them children, are killed in an airstrike as they queue for food supplements. Wide-ranging, persistent, unpredictable. Intelligence officials warn of the significant threat posed by Iran to people in the UK. 4 arrests by police investigating cyber attacks that hit the co-op Harrods and crippled M&S's online service. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Good evening. We will finally turn the tables on the migrant crisis in the English Channel. The promise from Sir Keir Starmer as he announced a new plan to send people who arrive on small boats back to France. The pilot one-in, one-out scheme, thrashed out with the French President Emmanuel Macron, will see migrants who cross the Channel detained and sent back. In return, Britain will grant asylum to an individual who is deemed to have a legitimate claim. The scheme is set to begin within a matter of weeks. But interestingly, neither Mr Macron nor Sir Keir gave any mention of numbers. Here's our political editor, Beth Rigby.
Britain's border force out this morning in the English Channel, intercepting yet another small boat and rescuing the people it's carrying. 79 more illegal migrants landing in Dover in a crisis that seems to have no end. Shortly after these migrants arrived in Britain, this man arrived in Downing Street for an Anglo-French summit with illegal migration top of the agenda. President Macron's the first European leader to come to the UK for a state visit since Brexit, so this is a massive symbolic moment. But today it's all about the politics. The Prime Minister really needs a win on small boats. President Macron, can you do a deal on small boats, sir? What these two leaders have agreed is to trial a limited returns deal where up to 50 migrants a week will be sent back to France. In return, Britain will take in the same number of migrants if they have links to the UK. It's expected to cost British taxpayers millions of pounds.
It's a pilot to break the model. That is the whole point of it. It is groundbreaking, and it's no wonder that for years British governments, previous governments, have been trying to secure a deal like this, a returns agreement like this, because all governments have realised just how important it is. And we've now been able to agree it, and we've agreed it because we have cooperated, collaborated through serious diplomacy to get an outcome which is best for both of our countries.
But President Macron also using this moment to blame Brexit for Britain's worsening border problems.
I wouldn't want there to be an idea that we're not doing our job or we're wasting UK money. I want to remind you that when you put in £1, we put in €3, and so we're putting in a lot of money to defend the border. We sold a lie to the British people, which is a problem with Europe, but the problem has become Brexit.
The Prime Minister had every right to look pleased today because Brexit cast a long shadow over relations between London and Paris, but with some deft diplomacy, he's turned the page and he's actually got a real policy win here today. Because what he and President Macron have agreed is a real plan to try and create a deterrent to stop small boat crossings. Now, it will start off as a pilot. It will be only a fraction of the people crossing illegally that will be sent back to France. But there is a possibility that he can scale it up and make a real difference. And that really matters because migration is a top 3 voter priority. And if he doesn't fix this problem, it's going to really hurt him at the polls. Because the political threat is real. Polling today finds 4 out of 10 people planning to vote Reform would consider switching to Labour if the number of small boat crossings were reduced.
I don't believe it'll work. I believe the numbers will be very limited indeed. And even if it did work, where's the advantage to us? This is Brexit Britain. We voted to take back control of our borders, not to accept a deal given to us by a French president.
This so-called deal will make no difference whatsoever. 44,000 illegal immigrants have crossed in the last year under Keir Starmer's watch, and his frankly pathetic returns deal will only see a paltry 50 illegal immigrants a week return to France. That represents only 6% of those arriving.
The PM promised to drive down illegal migration, but a year into power, boat crossings are at a record high at this point of the year. There's a lot riding on today's policy if images like this are to be a thing of the past. Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Well, let's take a look now at the scale of the challenge the UK and France are trying to tackle. So far this year, there's been a 50% increase in small boat crossings compared to the numbers up to this point in 2024. There have been more than 21,000 small boat crossings compared to just 14,000 at the same point last year. Back in 2021, it was under 7,000. But how does the number of small boat arrivals compare to legal migration? Well, in 2024, there were 36,000 arrivals on small boats. In that time, net migration to the UK was over 700,000, meaning the level of legal migration was 20 times higher than the number of small boat arrivals. Our Europe correspondent, Adam Parsons, has been out on the Channel and witnessed firsthand some of the tactics being used by the smuggling gangs. He sent us this report.
These are the scenes the British government is desperate to stop. A small boat loaded with dozens of people setting off across the Channel. The French police didn't stop it leaving, but it was shadowed by this search and rescue vessel, here to observe, not obstruct. We follow the boat as it chugs slowly along the coast for an hour. And then it takes a surprise detour back towards the shore. A police vehicle comes to meet it. A helicopter arrives, but the boat never lands. Instead, 4 people, almost certainly part of the smuggling gang that arranged this crossing, jump out and wade back to the shoreline as those left on board resume their journey. The 4 who leapt off are met by the French police, but they're barely questioned, let alone arrested, and within a minute they've walked off towards the dunes. Behind them, the frail, packed, slow-moving boat is on its way to Britain.
The French authorities are well aware of the progress of this boat. We've seen the police watch it leave the beach. There was a helicopter above, and that search and rescue vessel is monitoring its progress, but they won't intercept it because they're too worried about all of those migrants falling into the water. So unless the boat itself fails, all of those people will be landing in Britain.
We have seen how the smugglers who operate along this coastline are well organised and act fast. French police rarely enter the water, and the smugglers exploit that fact. British politicians have demanded tougher action from France. The French say the UK needs to address the pull factors that attract migrants. So what is it that draws so many people from around the world to make this journey? Many here don't want to talk on camera, but they do see the UK as their best option.
I'm trying to go to Manchester. But let me tell you one thing, yeah, all these people here, any of them when they get to the UK, they will be literally getting the black job. Black job, that means a job where you don't pay any tax or whatever, you just go work illegally. This is what they're going to do.
On this one small boat, another 50 people to add to the tally of many thousands who have crossed the Channel so far this year. A tide of humanity that is proving very hard to stem. Adam Parsons, Sky News, Dunkirk.
Let's cross now to Downing Street and our chief political correspondent, John Craig. And John, the Prime Minister calling the scheme groundbreaking. It is a pilot, but what are its chances of success?
Well, what was extraordinary with the announcement the Prime Minister made alongside the French President was there were no numbers given. For 24 hours or so, there have been claims that the numbers would be just 50 a week. So that adds up to about 2,600 a year. And that's only 17 only 1 in 17 migrants being sent back. Now, there's been no challenge of those numbers. The Prime Minister emphasised it's a trial. He said at one point he hoped the numbers would ramp up. But it does look like a paltry, small number. Tories are calling it a surrender deal. And there's also the possibility, of course, of challenges in the courts, perhaps. Also opposition from the European Union or other European countries, because countries like Spain and Italy don't like the idea that France is doing its own deal with the UK in a deal between two countries rather than involve the whole EU. And of course, then there were those extraordinary remarks about Brexit from the French president. He's touched on that a couple of times during his visit here. But my word, he really went in very strongly about the damage he claimed Brexit had done to this process. He began by saying that because of Brexit, there's no now migrant return deal between Britain and the European Union. That's a problem. Then he said Brexit had achieved the precise opposite of what was intended, what Brexiteers wanted. In other words, taking back control of borders. And then he made the strongest claim. He claimed that the Brexiteers had sold a lie to the British public back in 2016. Now, Tory Eurosceptics and the Reform UK politicians, led by Mr Farage, are furious at those remarks. So he has either wittingly or unwittingly reignited the whole Brexit row here. Now, the Prime Minister didn't want to get into that. He is stressing, using words like groundbreaking, a breakthrough and so on. He said that the returns would start in short order, as he said, in the next few weeks. But he's desperately hoping that this works because, of course, he made such a big deal of the Rwanda plan of the Tories being a failure, a disaster. And, of course, the Tories will hit back and say, look, our Rwanda plan was better than your plan. The Tories are already saying that they would bring back the Rwanda plan if they were to win the next general election. So, big gamble by the Prime Minister. He's hoping it's going to work. But those numbers look very, very small indeed.
OK, John, thanks for your analysis there. Still to come on Sky News at 10.
You've got one arrest being made here, another delivery driver being questioned, and another inside the undercover van around the corner. What's interesting is that the officers tell me that when they make a crackdown like this, the messages on the WhatsApp group for the delivery drivers goes wild, and they all go to ground for a few hours.
Dan Whitehead reports on immigration officers trying to crack down on illegal delivery drivers here. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu leaves Washington tonight as it stands without a ceasefire deal. There had been hopes of a deal being struck this week between Israel and Hamas. It comes as at least 16 Palestinians, 10 of them malnourished children and their mothers, were killed in a strike near a medical centre earlier today. The Israeli military says the incident is under review. A warning, this report from our international correspondent, Alex Rossi, contains distressing images from the start.
This is the aftermath of what Israel calls a targeted strike on a Hamas operative. The images are too graphic to show, but most of those killed are women and children. Mothers cradle their babies. It is absolute carnage. Families had gathered outside a clinic distributing baby formula in Deir al-Balah in central Gaza and were waiting for food when it happened.
Suddenly, at like 7:15 a.m., a strike hit in the front door of our primary health clinic, just 2 meters in front of the clinic. So, basically, we had 16 civilians died. 10 of them are children, 3 of them are women.
Israel's attacks on Gaza are intensifying all the time as the ceasefire negotiations grind on. People here are packing their belongings, displaced again after Israeli tanks moved in on the Al-Mawasi area, the so-called humanitarian safe zone. Israel claims it does not target civilians and abides by international law. But as fathers rush their lifeless children to hospital, they are denials that are simply not believed here. This is the aftermath of another mass casualty event. The Nasser hospital is overwhelmed, and this is now the daily reality. A woman weeps over the body of her child. She doesn't know where to turn or what to do. Not far away, another family is in total shock. This woman's sister was killed and her children were seriously injured after an Israeli strike in Khan Yunis. They don't know yet their mother is gone. She says, "I rushed to the hospital when I found out my sister was dead." As she speaks, the boy asks for his mum. She tells him not to worry. Mama is fine. But despite mounting casualties, Israel's war machine is not slowing. These IDF pictures show troops moving through the fractured landscape of southern Gaza. The Israeli military claims its operations are to destroy Hamas and its infrastructure. It claims these images show the demolition of tunnels. It is unclear when there will be a ceasefire in Gaza. And until there is, Gaza faces more death, more displacement, and more despair. Alex Rossi, Sky News, Jerusalem.
Let's bring in Sky's John Sparks, who's in Washington, D.C. for us. And John, what went wrong with the Netanyahu visit? We've had President Trump much trailing of a ceasefire agreement, but after this 4-day visit, nothing has materialised.
It's a good question, Gillian. I should say Netanyahu is still here 4 days into this visit, and that is a lengthy visit, isn't it, for a foreign leader in another capital? He has met everyone who is anybody in the Trump administration, including the president himself. They have met twice. I think the administration really wanted a deal, and they wanted to announce a deal while Netanyahu was here in Washington. They have applied pressure to both sides to try and make that happen, but it hasn't. And it looks like Netanyahu will leave this evening without the desired result. I think if we've got anything out of this, perhaps it's a slightly better understanding of what the difficulties are. And we've had a briefing from a senior Israeli official. This official said that a permanent end to the hostilities is questionable. And on a temporary ceasefire, this official said that could take a week, it could take 2 weeks, but certainly not a day. So I think, that is, I don't think that is as optimistic as we were, say, a couple of days ago. And the fundamental issue here is that the Netanyahu administration seek the total eradication of Hamas as a political entity, as a military entity as well. And one thing Netanyahu did say today was that even if there was a 60-day ceasefire agreement struck, and if Hamas was still around, then they would resume the offensive. And Hamas, and I should say both sides are still negotiating using interlocutors in Qatar as we speak, but Hamas are ultimately trying to ensure their own survival. So that is a really difficult problem to fix. So I think at the moment, diplomatically at least, things don't look that hopeful.
OK, John, thank you very much for the moment. There was a fresh warning today that the threat of physical attacks by Iran on people living in the UK has significantly increased. The comments come from Parliament's intelligence watchdog, which has described the danger as persistent and unpredictable. Tehran has dismissed the report as politically motivated and hostile. Our Home Editor, Jason Farrell, reports.
Iran's supreme leader 5 days ago in a rare public appearance. Today's report describes Iran as unpredictable with a risk appetite, willing to use assassination on UK soil as an instrument of state policy. Dissidents and journalists have been targeted, one of them Seema Sabet, forced to take protection after security services discovered a plot to kill her. Her former colleague, Poria Zarati, was stabbed last year.
We are dealing with the state, and dealing with the state means that whatever measures you take, they could be steps ahead of you. I mean, they are a terrorist state. They don't mind killing their opponent or journalists or anyone who is shedding light on the truth. And that was my only sin.
The report by the Intelligence and Security Committee says the Iran threat should not be underestimated. It is persistent and crucially unpredictable. There have been at least 15 attempts at murder or kidnap against British nationals or UK-based individuals since the beginning of 2022. It says the threat of physical attack on individuals is on a broadly comparable level with Russia.
Should the average person in the street be worried about this?
Yes, because the attacks on individuals here, the indiscriminate nature and recklessness of them could involve innocent bystanders, and that's the concern. And I think our security have been very good at thwarting 15 attacks over the last few years, but that doesn't mean that these won't continue.
In the past, there's been visible security in response to Iranian threats, such as here at Iran International's offices in West London. Dissidents are a key target, so too Jewish and Israeli interests in the UK.
The report is critical of the government's understanding of Iran, its lack of expertise and strategy. It doesn't say whether Iran's Revolutionary Guard should be prescribed as a terrorist organisation, but it does suggest that it's time for the government to make up its mind on that matter.
It's a terrorist organisation. Their operation in the UK shows a terrorist organisation is behind what they're doing, and why there hasn't been a proper response to stop them.
The Iranian embassy told us the Islamic Republic of Iran condemns the continued weaponization of unfounded intelligence assessments to justify hostile policies. It urges the UK to refrain from further disseminating false information that damages bilateral relations and regional stability. The government says it has and will continue to take action, wherever necessary, to protect national security. Jason Farrell, Sky News.
Well, responding to the Watchdog's report, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, has told Sky News that countering the Iranian threat is a big challenge for security services.
As you know, from Scotland Yard, we lead the national police work on countering terrorism and other national security threats, working with MI5. And the threat from Iran is very serious. We've spoken about tens of kidnap and sort of murder plots in the UK that we've had to tackle that have been directed or encouraged from Iran over the last couple of years or so. So this is very real and very live. Often that threat is to the Iranian diaspora, people who are proud of their heritage but critical of the current political regime. So we're doing an awful lot of work in that space, and that's a big challenge for us.
Sir Mark Rowley was speaking to Sunday Morning with Trevor Phillips earlier today. You can catch that full interview this weekend. 4 people have been arrested in connection with recent cyber attacks targeting Marks & Spencer, the Co-op and Harrods. They're being held on suspicion of blackmail, money laundering and participating in the activities of an organised crime group. Our correspondent Adele Robinson is with me now. Tell us a bit more, remind us about the attacks that took place, first of all.
Yeah, well, there was just under 3 months ago, those 3 big high street names, M&S, Harrods, and as you say, the Co-op. M&S was most largely affected. You know, you probably remember there were bare shelves. Their online retail side, the app went almost completely down. It was effectively brought to its knees. In fact, the company's market value, I think it wiped off around £750 million, and it's estimated that it lost up to £300 million in operating profits this year alone. So the impact was huge with regards to that particular business. What's happened now is the National Crime Agency have made their first arrests in connection to those 3 cyber attacks, at least those 3 cyber attacks. They describe this as a significant step, and they say that their investigation is now one of their highest priorities, obviously because the impact has been so huge on businesses in this country. Of the 4 arrested, as you said, there are 3 male teens from the West Midlands and London who were arrested this morning, and one is a 20-year-old woman as well from Staffordshire. The 17-year-old is a British teenager from the West Midlands. The 19-year-old is a British man from London, and then there's a 19-year-old Latvian man from the West Midlands as well. They're being currently questioned on suspicion of a range of different offences, such as Computer Misuse Act offences, blackmail, as you said, money laundering, and participating in the activities of an organised crime group. We've had a statement from the National Crime Agency in which they say, since these attacks took place, specialist NCA cybercrime investigators have been working at pace, and the investigation remains one of the agency's highest priorities. Today's arrests are a significant step in that investigation, but our work continues alongside partners in the UK and overseas to ensure those responsible are identified and brought to justice. Now, M&S have said that they welcome the development. The Co-op have said that they're pleased. These arrests, I think, though, demonstrate that progress is being made in an investigation that's likely to be long and complicated.
OK. Adele, thank you for that update. A police officer has told a jury she was absolutely terrified after she was floored with a punch to the face as she tried to arrest an assault suspect at Manchester Airport. A warning: the footage of the attack's aftermath is distressing. 20-year-old Mohammed Fahir Amaz and his older brother, Mohammed Ahmad, allegedly used a high level of violence after police were called to respond to an incident at a Starbucks cafe in Terminal 2 in July last year, when Amaz allegedly headbutted a customer. Both brothers are on trial in Liverpool. Amaz is accused of assaulting a member of the public and 3 police officers, and Ahmad is alleged to have assaulted an officer. Both men deny the allegations. An inquiry into the death of Imam Jalal Uddin has found there were 2 missed opportunities by counter-terror police to disrupt the activities of his killers before he was murdered in 2016. The Imam from Rochdale was killed by 2 young men who believed he was practising black magic. One of the suspects, Mohammed Hussein Saidi, was convicted of manslaughter, while the other suspect, Mohammed Abdul Qadir, fled to Turkey and has not been traced since. Royal Mail is to be allowed to scrap Saturday second-class stamp deliveries under a series of reforms proposed by the communications regulator. Ofcom says it will also be allowed to deliver second-class letters on alternate weekdays from the 28th of July. Post will still be delivered within 3 working days of collection from Monday to Friday. Now, as we've been hearing, one of the major hurdles to clamping down on illegal migrants is trying to limit the so-called pull factors that attract people to want to move to the UK. Sky News has been on patrol with a Home Office team, which is targeting thousands of migrants believed to be working here illegally as food delivery drivers. Our West of England correspondent, Dan Whitehead, has this special report.
999 activated.
10 minutes in, and the first mopeds are pulled over.
Just going to do a quick couple of checks on the vehicle, a couple of checks on your driver's licence now.
No insurance, but also a red flag for immigration.
You know from the start, you're under arrest for immigration detention. That's because I believe you're liable to be removed.
As leaders work out ways to stop arrivals, the Home Office says it's carrying out a blitz on the thousands of migrants already here, suspected of working illegally.
This is a real problem for you and your officers, isn't it?
It is a problem. We're tackling it, and the crackdown continues on preventing those who do not have the right to work in the UK.
Lunchtime, and as the deliveries get busy, so do immigration.
It came to me that you're delivering food. You've got a Just Eat bag.
The driver claims he uses the bag for his own food. The officer isn't buying it.
You've got one arrest being made here, another delivery driver being questioned, and another inside the undercover van around the corner. What's interesting is that the officers tell me that when they make a crackdown like this, the messages on the WhatsApp group for the delivery drivers goes wild, and they all go to ground for a few hours.
It's on those same WhatsApp groups that many migrants can rent driver delivery accounts enabling them to work straight away. Another problem is that right-to-work checks in the UK only apply to employees, not those self-employed in the rapidly growing gig economy, such as fast food delivery, something the government says it is sorting.
We've put a new part of the law into the Border Security Bill, which is going through Parliament, which will extend our ability to fine them £60,000 per worker to gig economy, the gig economy sector when it becomes law later this year.
Uber Eats, Deliveroo and Just Eat told Sky News they're continuing to strengthen checks and remove anyone working illegally.
So why are you in ownership of a branded Just Eat bag?
I just got it because I use it for grocery bills.
8 arrests and 14 vehicles seized. As the arrivals by boat continue, the push for a solution seems ever harder. Dan Whitehead, Sky News in Bristol.
That was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by Deputy Political Editor of The Spectator, James Heal, and political journalist Zoe Grunewald. Amongst the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of the Metro. Its headline, it's one in, one doubt, relating to the announcement by Sir Keir Starmer and President Macron. We'll be right back with further details.